Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a new lecture in your course, Mastering Ansible by Avionics. My name is Ahmed. In this section, we are discussing different modules of Ansible, and we are also building our LAMP stack as an example project in this class. We are going to start by deploying MariaDB on the database server. However, we do not have a database server yet, so we will have to create one. So let's go to our example system, clear the screen and exit from the client machine because we are going to use Vagrant now in order to create a database machine. So let's go to our Vagrant file, skip to the end, and as you can see here we have the last two stanzas or three stanzas of the file contain the different servers that we intend to provision or that we have already provisioned. Let's have a copy of, let's say, this stanza, those 4 lines, because we don't want Ansible to provision the machine for us, or we don't want Vagrant to bootstrap the machine for us. We want to use Vagrant for that. So let's paste it, and we are going to define db do. Server name is going to be database. This is going to be db, and the IP address is going to be 33.30 instead of 20. You're going to increase it by 10, and that's it. Now all what we have to do is issue Vagrant up like this. Okay, so now the machine is up and running. Let's clear the screen, and if we issue Vagrant status like this, we are going to have a look at the status of the current machine in this lab. We have client, we have server, we have web server, and we have DB. So now that we don't need the server in our list, let's hold this machine, hold server, don't need it no longer. We don't need it any longer in this class, so we are gonna hold it, maybe destroy it at the end of the section. Just leave it if we need it. Okay, and let's have a look again at, and let's log in again to client machine, and let's have a look at /etc/ansible/hosts, and let's make some changes. Here, this is gonna be called web. We're gonna create a group for our web server or web servers if you are intending to create more than one web server in our infrastructure. And we are gonna also create another group that will be called DB. So we have web, we have DB. Inside the DB, we are gonna add the IP address of our database machine, 33.30. Now we can ping both servers to ensure that everything is working correctly. Okay, so web server is not responding. Let's see what the problem is. Okay, seems that there is a problem with the configuration. Let's exit, clear the screen, and go to Vagrant file, ensure that everything on the web server is okay. We don't have an IP for the web server, so we need to add that here. And we need also to hash out those of the server. Problem is that the web server did not have a private network, so we changed that in the Vagrant file, and let's issue Vagrant reload web server in order to reflect the changes that we have just made to the Vagrant file. Okay, seems that we have another problem. Solve it quickly. Okay. And as you can see here, it is very easy to make multiple changes to your virtual machine just by changing some values in the Vagrant file. Adding or removing lines will completely change the behavior and the characteristics of your machine. Okay, so now the machine has been reloaded. Let's clear the screen and let's Vagrant SSH web server, right issuing IP-ADDR. Yes, it's got its IP address. Now we can go back to our client, start working from there as usual. If you want to ping 192.168.33.20, which is the web server, okay, it's replying. If you want to ping the database server, it is replying as well. So now the second thing we need to do is to ensure that client can talk to the web server and to the database server using public private key authentication. Let's see if that is possible with web server. Okay, it has not been configured yet, so we need to have a look at /home/vagrant /.ssh, which contains the public private keys. This is the public key of the machine. I'm gonna copy it like this. Exit vagrant SSH web server, then vi.ssh authorized keys, and inside I'm going to paste this key. Just paste it like this, without any spaces at the end or without any new lines. Then do the same thing with the database node or machine. It seems that it does have another name than database. I call it DB, okay. And again, inside authorized keys, let's add our public key. Exit vagrant SSH client. If we SSH to 192.168.33.20, which is the web server, we can log in successfully without using a password. If we tried the DB or the database, yes, and we are also inside database without being asked for a password, and that is our intended target. Okay, now let's clear the screen and let's see how we can deploy MariaDB on the server. As usual, and as we have just mentioned, we can use Ansible, and we're gonna talk to DB. So we are passing in the name of the group that is called DB, and then -b because we want to assume the root or the admin role, because we are going to use the yum command or the yum module. So I'm using -m, then yum, then -a to pass in the parameters. We need name equal MariaDB-server, which is the name of the package, and also we need to specify that the state is present, and that is just to be more verbose, because as we just mentioned, the state is by default present. So if you omitted state from here, it will not cause any trouble. It's just gonna install MariaDB-server. Just putting it here for easier documentation and to make the code more readable. Okay, let's press enter and wait for a few moments. Okay, and the command has finally returned, and it has installed MariaDB server package on our remote system, which is the database. Next thing we need to do is that we want to ensure that the MariaDB service is started and that it will always start on system boot. So to do that, let's clear the screen and let's again use Ansible DB to talk to the DB group, -b for being root, -m for using a module, and this time we're going to use the service module of Ansible. Service, as its name implies, is used to manage or control the different services that run on the remote system. In our case, we are interested in a package that is called MariaDB, and the state needs to be started, okay? And also, we need it to be enabled on system boot. Let's press enter and wait for a few moments. Okay, and as you can see here, the command has some verbose output. It is successful. It has changed the server. If you want to make sure, you can always SSH to the remote machine and have a look at your work. rpm-qa grep MariaDB. And as you can see here, we have MariaDB installed. And if you have a look at service MariaDB status, it is loaded. Okay, let's exit. And now that we have MariaDB installed, this is not sufficient to start working with it. We need to configure several aspects like setting the root password, creating an application database, an application user. So in order to do that, we are going to use Ansible's module for working with MySQL or MariaDB databases. Actually, Ansible has several modules for working with different database vendors, among which is MySQL or MariaDB, if you want to call it. But in order to use this module, you have to install the MySQL-Python package, and this has to be installed on the target machine. So let's do just that. Let's clear the screen and let's again use Ansible-B because we're going to use, sorry, it's DB first, then -b because we're going to use the root privileges, then -m for yum, and -a name equal MySQL with the same case sensitivity, MySQL-Python, and state is present. Let's click enter and wait for a few moments. Okay, and the command returned with the success status. Now we have mysql-python installed. So now that we have this package installed on the remote machine, we can use the Ansible modules that start with mysql_ to make several things to our remote machine or to our remote database. The first thing we have to do is we need to configure, let's write it as a comment, we need to configure or set the root password for MariaDB. So in order to do that, we are going to use the following Ansible command. Ansible db-b, because this has to be done using the root role or the root user account, -m, and this time I'm gonna use mysql_user. This is one of several modules that ship with Ansible, and they are used to control and work with MySQL or MariaDB databases. So mysql_user -a, the parameters that we are going to pass is that the name is root, the host is localhost, and the password is the password that you intend to use for the root user or the root account. And the root account here refers to the root account of MariaDB or MySQL, not the root account of the remote system. The administrator of the MySQL database is called root, and we have to set a password for this account before we can continue working with this lab. So I'm gonna use my password. Of course, this is a very weak password, and you are strongly not encouraged to use something like that in a production environment. You'll have to conform to the security policy of your organization by setting a strong password that contains letters, special characters, and numbers. But for sakes of simplicity, I'm gonna use this simple password just to be easier to remember, and I'm gonna press enter. And okay, change it true, and the user is root. If you want to double check your work, you will have to SSH to the remote machine and use MySQL, which is the client for MySQL, -u, the user is root, and -p, and I can actually attach the password to -p, which is a non-secure practice, but I'm doing it here just to show you that we are using my password as a password for root, and pressing enter, I have successfully connected to MariaDB. Let's exit the machine and have a look at our next command. Our next command will be used to create an application user. So create an application user. And the reason we are doing this is that it's a very bad practice to let the root account handle all the connections to the database and all the work on the database. This is very insecure because if this root password got compromised, the attacker has complete control over your MySQL database. All your databases, all your tables, all your information, and all your data will be at risk. So we create an application user for each application that will be connected or that will use the MySQL instance, and this will just mitigate the risk of compromising your whole database if this password was, for example, stolen or hacked in some way or another. So in order to do that, we are going to use Ansible again. And it's worth noting that if you don't use Ansible and if you don't have a configuration management tool, you would have to log in individually to each server if you have multiple database servers, and you would have to run some SQL commands on the MySQL database in order to create this user and set its password and so on. But using Ansible, we can just use the -m MySQL _user module and -a name equal CodeIgniter. And CodeIgniter is the name of our application user, and it is also the name of the PHP framework that we are going to download and install maybe later in this class. And CodeIgniter is a very famous PHP framework that is used by many developers around the world, and it's also easy to install, so I chose it because of its reputation and because it is easy to install relatively. So using it will let you focus more on Ansible commands and not get distracted by specific PHP framework commands or configuration. So the name of the user will be CodeIgniter, which is the name of our application, and you have to pass in the host under which this user will be logged in. So it's localhost, and password. This is the password of the application user. Again, I'm gonna use an easy password. CI password, CI for CodeIgniter, and password. And then I'll have to add in another parameter, which is priv for privileges. And privileges refer to the different access levels that this user will have. So in our case, we are going to create a database that is called appdb. This is going to be created later. And I want to give this user access to all the tables that are under this database. So I'm using the asterisk, so it's dot asterisk, and then all in caps like this. Okay, and of course the state is present. Okay, then let's close the code and press enter. Okay, we forgot to add the login user and the login password, because so far we have not supplied the user which is going to connect to MariaDB to execute this command, to execute creating the user. So a login user is root, and login password is my password. We have already said that. Pressing enter, now it has been changed. Now this user has been created and it has access on a database that has not been created yet. It is called appdb. Okay, let's clear the screen. And as a matter of fact, we should change the host part of the command here to be a %sign, because leaving the command like this will ensure that CodeIgniter user can only connect from localhost, and we need this user to connect from other hosts, other web servers, and other application servers to the database. So it should be better to leave this at a %sign. Let's press enter. And due to Ansible idempotence, executing the same command will check first if the user exists. If it doesn't, it will create it. If it does exist and there was a change in its properties, it will reflect those changes, as you can see here. Now time to create the database, because we haven't created the database yet. We need to create a database that is called appdb. So let's clear the screen and type again Ansible db-m. This time we're going to use MySQL_db as the module. -a name is appdb. Then the login user is root, login password is my password. Pressing enter. Okay, it has created a database that is called appdb on the database server. Very easy. Now let's exit and let's ensure that we can access the database from the web server. But before I do that, I need to make sure that a MySQL client is installed on the web server in order to be able to use it to connect to the database. So using Ansible, let's do just that quickly. Ansible web-m yum-a name equal MySQL. This is the name of the client. State, or let's just omit the state for this, just to demonstrate that it is an optional component. It is by default present. And of course, -b for assuming the root privileges. Let's press enter and wait for a few moments. Okay, and the package now is installed. Now let's exit and go to web server, MySQL-u, CodeIgniter, the user, -h, the IP address of the host, -p, the password used for connection. And as you can see here, I can connect successfully to MariaDB remotely. I can also use appdb to change the working database to appdb, and I can successfully access the appdb database as CodeIgniter. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. In the coming lecture, we're going to start working with the web server. We're going to start by installing PHP 7 or preparing for that installation. So until then, see you next.